recording. Okay. Right, well, welcome to Financial Wellbeing for All. It's lovely to have you all here. My name's Amanda Whiteford. I'm a member of the committee for the Essex and Ipswich branch, and I run the one of the local groups, Southend and Chelmsford, and I'm the treasurer. And I'm delighted today to welcome our speakers, Linda Redgrave from Southend Citizens Advice Bureau, and John Chadwick and Bal Darnoy from Planned Future. So they're going to talk to us today about financial wellbeing for all. And the objective of our webinar is to help employers of any size understand the different options they have for supporting their employees who might be worried about their financial well-being and their finances, obviously without getting involved because that wouldn't be appropriate, but being able to signpost them to appropriate resources. So that's the focus of what we're going to cover today. We're going to start off by hearing from Planned Future, who will talk to us about the work that they do with employers for 20 minutes. We'll then move over to Citizens Advice to talk about the support that they can give to anybody who is worried about their finances, also for 20 minutes, and then we'll have a joint Q&A. And I'd ask you to put your questions into the chat box, and I will select the questions and pose those to the panel for the final 20 minutes of our presentation. So if you could keep your microphones off and your cameras off, that would help things. Thank you very much. And I'm delighted then to move on to our first speakers. So Bal and John, over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. I'll just share my screen. So hopefully now you're able to see the slide supporting your employees' financial well-being. If Bal or Amanda could just do a thumbs up to say you can see the slides. Yep, great. Okay, so welcome everybody. My name's John Chadwick. I'm the Managing Director of Planned Future. I'm up in North Wales at the moment, and it's a nice sunny day here. I hope it's sunny where you are. So I'm just going to speak for 10 minutes, and then I'll be passing over to my colleague Bal, who will also speak for 10 minutes. So first of all, we're just going to look at some numbers around financial well-being. I think you know, intuitively, many people struggle with their financial well-being, and I think that's even more coming to focus recently. Very challenging times with COVID, and then just lately we've got inflation rearing its ugly head again, with massive increases in energy prices, gas prices, electricity prices, petrol and diesel. And according to Aegon Financial Wellbeing Index, 19 million people are struggling with their financial well-being, and 6.5 million people scored poorly in terms of financial well-being and financial mindset. And as many as 5 in 6 of the population could take action to improve their financial well-being. Only 16% of the population combine healthy financial well-being with a positive money mindset. And we're going to talk a little bit in a minute about money mindset. So first of all, there is a link between mental health problems and people with financial problems, and people with problem debt, whether it's loans or credit cards or overdrafts, are significantly more likely to experience mental health problems. And it works the other way. People with problem debt, 46% of people with problem debt also have a mental health problem. And 86% of respondents to a money and mental health survey of nearly 5,500 people with experience of mental health problems said their financial situation had made their mental health problems worse. So there's definitely a link between financial well-being and mental well-being. And I actually watched, you may have heard of a gentleman called Professor Sakari Cooper. I watched a webinar that he did at Manchester University. He's a psychologist that's been at Manchester University for 50 years now. he was saying that mental ill health costs the UK apparently 70 billion per annum, or 4.5% of GDP. And it works out for each employee, mental health costs, according to his survey, £1,035 per year per employee. So certainly we know that mental health, and one of the pillars of well-being is financial education. And according to the CIPD, 1 in 4 employees admit financial worries impact their productivity at work. So with things like stress and anxiety and depression, obviously people can take time off work and you get this problem with absenteeism, but also presenteeism, where people feel that they can't take a day off work, particularly if it's stress and anxiety. They come into work, but their worries, cause presenteeism or not performing properly because you're not in a good state of mind. And Professor Carey Cooper was saying that presenteeism is found to be twice as expensive for an employer as absenteeism, which is quite amazing, really. Now, financial education, obviously, 45% of employees claim that money matters are their, I think I'm just move my slide, their number 1 cause of stress, a condition which leads to 15 million work days off each year in the UK. And very often people take time off work. Quite often they won't say that it's because of a stress or anxiety problem. They might give a physical problem. Some people feel uneasy about admitting that it is something like stress or anxiety. So how can you help support your employees? Employers can do things to help improve the financial well-being of their employees. So, for example, you can offer what used to be live workshops or seminars, which are more often these days webinars. Also, financial clinics can be useful, that's where you have a financial expert who's available for a whole day, and people can make half-hour appointments to speak about their own situation. So the financial well-being webinars cover general information, whereas the financial clinic days allow people to talk about their own specific problems with an expert. And there are also online resources where you can make a portal available, which has lots of financial information and guides. Bal's going to talk about that, but that's available 24/7, and some people prefer to look at things in their own time. Now, what we've done as a company is realize that financial education is one thing. So you can talk about things like personal budgeting and loans and credit cards and mortgages and tax and national insurance. That's what we would call the financial education side. But what we found, we work with money coaches, and what they talk about, we generally do 2 sessions. The first session is a money coach, and they talk about money beliefs and behaviors, because really what we found is it's not as effective to educate people on their personal finances. The first thing you've got to do is help people to understand what their habits and their behaviors and their thinking and beliefs around money. Now, these money habits, we all grow up and develop money habits during early childhood. And it could be that we absorb messages from our parents and what the wider cultural environment. And this leads us to have a certain relationship with money. Many people feel that they're unable to manage their finances as well as they could do. And they often feel a sense of shame or guilt, feel that they should understand it. And also reaching out for help, people feel they may be judged because they don't have that financial understanding. So as I say, to emphasize again, we use experienced money coaches who teach people to learn more about what their relationship with money is. And that first step then paves the way to deliver the technical financial information. So we want to try and understand patterns and behavior around money and develop positive financial behaviors. And what the money coaches say, a lot of this is to do with the way that human beings have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. We're hardwired by evolution for things like instant gratification and avoiding danger, and we're all the same. We're all a product of evolution. And financial matters, very often you need to think about the medium term or long term, but human beings are wired to think about the short term, and that can lead to problems with money. So financial literacy, which is the education bit, can only be effective if people have positive emotions and beliefs around money. For example, budgeting. If that makes you feel anxious, it's hard to do a proper budget. So the first step in enhancing financial well-being is to address the above, and that drives financial well-being. So I think that's where I hand over to you, Bal, isn't it? So I'll stop sharing my screen if you could start sharing yours.
Sure. Thank you. So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. So my name is Bal. I work for Planned Future for nearly 6 years now. And my job is to arrange around 300 to 350 events a year for all size of companies. So I dealt with organizations who only employ 16 people, but I also dealt with organizations who employ in excess of 17,000 people. So in other words, as most of you will be aware, demographics of each company is different. And where this comes down to really is, if you look at your workforce, and a person in the early 20s are likely to be interested in something that maybe somebody in their late 40s, early 50s. So what we've done is we built our presentations on the 5-point plan to financial well-being. And if you just give me a second, I'll hopefully start to do the slide. Apologies, I don't know why I can't find the slideshow. There you go. So, oops, apologies. Right, so what's the 5-point plan? Can everybody see my screen? Just a quick thumbs up. Yeah, so what's your 5-point plan of financial well-being? So I won't go into too much about, because John mentioned a lot about the money behaviors and beliefs. So it is true that if we all grow up with core habits in our life from the age of 0 to 7, and money is one of those things that we pick up all our habits, mainly from our parents potentially. So my dad always used to tell me, money doesn't grow on trees. If you work hard and long hours, you will be okay to provide for your family, which is great. But what my dad never used to tell me is, if you look at your pension contributions earlier in your life, or if you look at buy-to-let property options, that will help you in your future planning. So that's okay. So your money beliefs is one thing, but what we're trying to establish, if you have any bad habits around money, if you don't fix those problems, you will just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. It's a bit like what John said. It's no point telling somebody, you know, it's 41% charge on an overdraft if you don't understand why you get to that point in the first place. So the first part of our 5-point plan is money beliefs and behaviors. So understanding what your perception around money and what your relationship is with money. Then manage your daily finances is all around personal budgeting, making sure that your income doesn't exceed your outgoings. Sorry, outgoing doesn't exceed your income. I always get this mixed up. But you may find this is a little bit elementary, but according to CIPD, 24% of the UK workforce cannot read bank statements and payslips correctly. I find it a little bit too high, but it means that for some people, just going to the basic element of understanding how you budget your money, making sure that you have enough by the end of the month can be quite crucial. Then we go around the third part, which is probably the most important, is be prepared for a rainy day. So now how you build the buffer to absorb any unforeseen expenses, such as your boiler breaks down, your roof fails off, what do you have in place should anything happen to your health or your work. Then you've got number 4, which is the bigger picture. So you're helping develop a clear path for your financial future. And this is also includes how you protect your family financially, how you protect your spouse, how you protect your children should anything happen to you. And then the last one is widen your horizons, which means what's your short, your medium, and your long-term financial strategy. And also we're looking at things like what you leave behind should anything happen to you, the unexpected was to happen to you. So this is our way to do this, but what can you do as an organization to help your employees? You can run financial well-being presentation modules, which usually last for an hour to an hour and a half. They can be done on site, they can be done online, whether Zoom or Teams meetings. We also have an element where we run around 100 to 120 retirement planning workshops. And what you mean by retirement planning is an organization who have hundreds of employees normally have around a dozen to 15 people who would be thinking of retirement in the next couple of years. Now, you may all think, well, we might support our employees through our group pension scheme provider, and that happens at some places. But what we also help as well, which shows in this particular slide, you can have a half-day retirement planning event which focuses on your financial approach, your occupational pension scheme, as well as your state pension. But if you were to expand this for a full-day retirement planning, you would also have a retirement educator who talks about the approach, the lifestyle approach, the hopes and concerns for retirement, really. So we offer a couple of financial wellbeing webinars, all the way from the 18 to 25 category, where you're looking at how you manage your money, mortgages, savings, lending options, financial resources, to the people in the middle of their career, how you protect your family financially, which focuses on things like life assurance, the importance of life assurance, income protection, and critical illness. And then moving on to the other side of the workforce, where you talk about investments and pensions, mainly because most people would move jobs. And when they move jobs, they leave their pensions behind. So they're trying to understand, if I retire in 5, 10, 15 years from now, I want to understand what those pensions do for me when they pay out. How can I do a phased retirement option potentially? And what's cash flow modeling? How do I start to think of, retirement in a sense? Another way we can help people as well is what's called the Financial Wellbeing Portal. So some organizations we work with, they don't think live events work for them. So in other words, they may have a lot of people out in the field, or they don't have access to email potentially, and they also look into online resources more useful for them. So in other words, they can log into a bespoke financial wellbeing portal, which have videos, guides, links, and calculators, and then people can self-educate themselves. But what probably the most important part of our portal is our sister company, Plan Future sister company, is a firm of independent financial advisors called Chadwick CIPD, which you can see on the bottom of the email. So if anybody has any particular question, they may want to ask what the top 10 deposit accounts, or they're looking at buy-to-let property options, or protecting their family, or pensions and investments, they always have the option to ask a qualified financial advisor 24/7, normally for a year. But if they feel if they could benefit from a conversation with a financial advisor without any obligation, they can do that. So all in all, we can do any kind of way, whether online works for you, if you want to get a couple of hundred people signed up from your organization to your own financial wellbeing portal, which will be bespoke to you, or you think financial events run maybe once every quarter, whichever way you do it. Financial education, if you educate your staff, it will become a better workplace. And I know John mentioned a couple of statistics for you. One of the things to say in the end, what better way to prove that it works is we can provide the organization with what's called the Financial Wellbeing Survey. So what would that mean is, in the beginning of the program, say a 12 months program, we would give you a survey that you can send out to all your employees, and it's 19 questions to be asked. and it will give you a financial well-being score anything from 0 to 66. So let's say the financial well-being score is 19 at the beginning of the program, which then go up to 44 out of 66 by the end of the program. What does that mean? Job well done. If you help your employees to understand how to manage their money better, if you understand them how to see any unforeseen expenses, it will become a better workplace. And therefore, there's a lot of things like productivity goes down, as John mentioned. So productivity goes up, absentees goes down. And one more important thing to say, which John didn't mention, according to the national statistics, an organization employs more than 200 employees. By implementing a financial wellbeing program can save you as much as £30,000 a year just on recruitment cost alone. You may ask yourself, why is this possible? It's a very easy answer, really. A lot of people, for example, they're looking for a mortgage. Given this current circumstances, they may feel they may need to move into another job to earn a couple of £1,000 more per year to afford the house they always wanted or a flat. But once you give them education, once you understand how to get on the property ladder, what do you need to work out in terms of getting to that stage, they might just stay, and then it makes them realize, actually, it's not worth me moving. So there is a lot of saving to be added, a lot of savings to be made by implementing a financial wellbeing program as well. So that would be me, Amanda. I think that's the last slide.
Thank you.
So I'll hand it
Thank
back
you to both you and John Bell. That was really interesting. Thank you very much. Okay. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box. I will then ask them at the end of the session. But now what I'm going to do is ask Linda Redgrave from Southend Citizens Advice Bureau to share her screen and begin her presentation. Is that okay, Linda? John, have you stopped sharing your screen?
Yes, we both have, yeah.
Great, okay. So Linda, are you there?
I am.
Lovely.
I've got a sticky mouse at the moment.
Right, okay. So we just need to see any slides you want to share with us.
Okay, so I put share slides. There we are. Can you see them?
Right. Yes, not yet, but yes, now we can. Excellent. Thank you very much.
That was a very interesting presentation that you actually did. Thank you for that. And I hope this kind of supports the moving forward, what we're all trying to achieve today. So my name's Linda Redgrave. I work for Citizens Advice Southend, and I'm a debt advice caseworker. So my background was in financial services for 25 years before retiring and then joining as a volunteer for Citizens Advice, where I've now worked for 13 years. So I've kind of seen both sides of the fence, if that makes any sense. So I sold financial products, and now I actually am getting paid for putting their problems right. That is the Southend Debt team. I'm the one in the black at the desk, looking very serious. As you can see there, we are a team of 5, but one of us was actually on holiday that day. This is, once again, I took some statistics as well, and 24% of UK employees worry about money every day. Now, the source of this is the wages stream, which is called the State of Financial Wellbeing Report 2022. So I think it's very much along the lines of what you were speaking about earlier. 24% of UK employees worry about money every day. 50% of UK employees want help with savings in 2022. 52% of employees think their employer supports them with money. And 93% of employers report having a financial wellbeing strategy in place. So I thought the bottom 3 were very encouraging. The 24% of UK employees worry about money every day. With what's actually going on, I'd like to think it's not going to go up, but I do think that that percentage will increase. Citizens Advice. So who are we? So we're a non fee charging organisation. We are not a for-profit organisation. We're there to support our local community. And we also campaign to change social policy. I've given you the contact details for Citizens Advice, and I believe, Amanda, you're going to be sharing these slides as well, so you will be able to have the contact details.
Yes, that's right.
So why don't people seek debt advice? So typically they've buried their head in the sand. They've not kept their paperwork. They're not opening their post. They do not understand the letters they're receiving. They don't know the level of the debts. They really worry they might be prejudged. And sometimes it's just easier not to deal with the problem than actually dealing with it. So commonly, when I say to people, can you tell me what's actually brought you here? Why aren't you managing? What's actually going on? That would be the number one reason, which they will tell me is they've buried their head in the sand. They've not kept their paperwork, and they're not opening their posts. So what I always ask them to do is, when they're going to come along and see me, is they bring their paperwork with them. Even if it's unopened, we don't mind. And you would be surprised how many carrier bags people do actually turn up with. So what I will do at that stage, I probably won't be able to carry on with the interview, but I will take the post off of them and their paperwork. I'll sort it out. I will separate the old post from the new post, take out all the duplications, and usually end up with a little tiny pile. And I always say to them, I always think myself, that if you were carrying that weight of debt around with you, just think that's in your head. And then for somebody to actually give you this very small pile of paperwork, they must feel as if they've lost about 2 stone when they actually do get to see actually what they're actually worried about. And that then means that I can actually work with them. So that's usually going to happen at a second appointment. They most certainly don't understand default notices. They don't understand county court judgments that they're receiving. Everything is really, really complicated. So we treat each debt that they've actually got slowly, giving them the advice and what they can do to actually resolve the issue. Lots of them haven't a clue about the level of their debts, and even if we've got the paperwork, they still think there might be other debts. That sometimes they think it's just the tip of the iceberg. So what we would actually do is encourage them to actually apply for their Experian credit reports. There's 3 credit agencies. You've got Experian, you've got Credit TransUnion, and you've got Equifax. And you can apply for what's called your statutory credit report. You don't have to pay for credit reports nowadays, but the statutory credit reports really give a debt advisor the information that they need, including county court judgments. So what we will actually have is we'll have their paperwork that they've brought in with them. We'll know the level of their debts, and we'll also be able to work with them to resolve the issues they've got. Typically, another problem they have is that they'll be prejudged. And that's because they actually do feel quite guilty about getting into debts. I always say to my clients, there's enough people out there to beat you up. You don't need to do it to yourself. We are totally non-judgmental. There won't be too much that we haven't heard before. Once the interview is actually carried out, then it can become quite difficult, because for some people, they've made the first step, but the next bit can be very hard for them. And sometimes dealing with a problem actually becomes more difficult than not dealing with it. And that is really where the skills of a debt advisor come in. So what does a typical debt advice interview look like? It's like everything else. You've got to know your client. In financial services, it was know your customer. Here, it's know your client. We collect a fact find. By the time they've actually left, there's not too much that we don't know about them. We've looked at their background, we've looked at where they come from, we looked at if they're UK citizens. Everything is relevant to the debt advice we're going to give moving forward. We'll know about their earnings, we'll know about their housing, we'll know about their assets, we'll know if they're expecting any lump sums. We will then carry out a benefit check for them. So with that, we're hoping to actually maximise their income. So what we're looking to do to see if there are any entitlements to benefits. And we can do that very cheap, very quickly. We have a program that we actually use, and we can print it out immediately and give it to our clients. If we do identify an entitlement to benefits, we tell them how to apply. We can help them how to apply. We can do all of that for them. The very next step that we carry out is a financial statement. A financial statement is the key to what we're going to do next. So we're going to look at their income. We're going to look at their outgoings. We're going to look and see if there's any monthly disposable income, if not. If there is monthly disposable income, we have a set of options we can actually go down. If there's no monthly disposable income, another set of options we actually go down. What we will then do is we'll present the options that are accessible to them. So, for example, clients will come in and I'll say, hello, what can I do for you today? And they'll say, I want to make a payment arrangement with my creditors. Okay, carry out the financial statement, look at that. No monthly disposable income. So an accessible option is not agreeing payment installments with your creditors. And that's how we work. We take the options, we look and see if they're accessible. If they're not accessible, we tell them. But we will also tell them if they're both accessible and suitable. And once again, we will tell them what their options are for dealing with their money. We don't tell them what to do. We give them options. We actually let them take ownership of the options that they actually want. It works better for everybody that way if they do actually recognise the option that they need to take. Some options aren't very nice. If you're a property owner and you've got assets and your property is never going to be affordable, that's a hard conversation to actually have with somebody, to actually tell them perhaps they might have to sell their property, and then we'll take them down that route as well. We'll show them how to sell it. We'll tell them how to get the estate agent's valuations. If there are any problems with mortgage arrears, we'll actually liaise with the lender. We'll tell them how to actually operate in court as well when they get called for the possession hearings. That's all part of the role that we actually have. Part of maximisation of income is also looking at different things that they can actually do. That can be, I don't know, trying to actually reduce their electricity, gas, not that's very likely these days, to actually look at how to reduce their motoring costs. Are they claiming all the benefits they're actually entitled to? And we have a fact sheet which is updated regularly, and that will have all the links that they actually need. What we do then to cement everything we've spoken about is we issue what's called a confirmation of advice letter. It will actually summarise what's been discussed, what's been agreed, and then we will agree next steps. Now, with citizens advice, they can have as many interviews as they require. They're not actually limited to the amount of interviews they can have. So what that means is we can, if a client hasn't actually agreed which debt option they're going to take, we can offer the confirmation of advice letter, and we can then agree a further meeting, let's say in 2 weeks' time, after they've actually had a chat with friends, relatives, etc., spoken to their partners. And at that stage, we're hoping to actually start to get a plan together for them. The resources that we actually use So we have a whole range of resources, as you can imagine. The first ones are the FCA conduct rules. So typically they're called CONCS, C-O-N-C-S, and there's two sets of conduct rules that we actually use, and those are the ones that apply to creditors and ones that apply to debt counselling services such as citizens advice. And we rely on these rules, especially the rules that the creditors actually have to cooperate with the FCA, because a creditor has got very clear guidelines on what they can and can't do. So they cannot push a debtor into unaffordable payment arrangements. They cannot make them sell their house. They cannot make them use their pension to repay their debts. They cannot chase clients for debtors for money if the debtor's telling them they don't owe it. We have very clear rules, and we use those rules just to actually say to creditors, just hang on a minute, you just can't do that. We quote the FCA conduct rule, and that really then enables us to actually start having a good conversation with the creditor. We use Shelter a lot. Shelter, once again, you can actually Google Shelter. They have two sites. They have the public site and they have a specialist support site. We use a specialist support site. So every now and again, we'll get a case, it's just too difficult for us. We're not legally trained, but they are. So they can actually help us in looking at the civil procedure rules. And if we've got something that's particularly difficult, they will actually talk us through it, send us a report, and we then can use that to advise our clients. We will use Turn to Us website. Turn to Us website is, once again, you can Google it. There's lots and lots of charitable grants on the Turn to Us website. You can go for bankruptcy fees, you can go for help with white goods. If you've got somebody, a poorly child, who would like to actually go on holiday, they can help with those types of expenses. It's in alphabetical order, so if you're in the police, you press P and it will bring you up all the charities that actually help the police. If you work in the building trade, you can push building trade and you'll get all the organisations that assist the building trade. If you work in hospitality, press H, or press B for bar, working in a bar, and once again you'll get all of the charities that actually will help you with whatever it is you actually need. And the criteria for an application is really clearly explained. Debt and mental health evidence form. We are seeing a lot of mental health problems, and which turns into debt problems as well. The debt and mental health evidence form we use, once again, it's available on the internet. You can just Google it. It's completed by a GP or a health professional, and we use that if we think it's appropriate, and we then send that off to a creditor. So if we're asking for a write-off, we use that as part of our evidence to support the request we're making. You might not get the response you're hoping, which is a write-off, but it will stop court action and they will be passed onto a special team who will treat them quite gently. So you might not get the write-off, but you will actually stop your clients from getting quite a rough approach from creditors that sometimes they can get. I've touched on statutory credit reports. Once again, we use those. They're a resource for us to actually find out those missing debts and balances and county court judgments. We have our own in-house advisory where we can actually go to, which is called AdvisorNet. We use that all the time. It's got a host of subjects. There's a public site, and then we have the advisor site as well. I use the public site probably more than I do the advisor site because it's much more easier to navigate. Once again, you can find that just by doing a Google search and just typing in Citizens Advice Advisor there. We have trusted sites as well. National Deadline are one of our trusted partners, and their fact sheets will just about tell you everything you will ever need to know about dealing with your debts. And once again, they're easily printed off. Very, very easy to follow. And of course, if you want to, you can also use their chat line as well to actually, if you want a bit more advice or you're not sure what they're actually saying. I've also scribbled down here, which isn't on the sites, it's TaxAid. So TaxAid are there, that once again, as a charity, they've got their own criteria, but you can actually go to TaxAid if you've got tax debts, which can be quite difficult to actually sort out. Once again, it's a free service. I've also written down PensionWise, which is a government site, once again, and PensionWise will give impartial free debt pension options. They don't tell you, to take the pension. They don't give financial advice. Citizens Advice staff can't do that, but they can actually give you the options you have for your pensions. And we also have the pension tracing service. So once again, I think this was touched on by the other presenters, which is lots of people have frozen pensions, orphan pensions, pensions that they've forgotten about, pensions where their companies have gone into liquidation or bankruptcy, and we can help them trace those pensions. Once again, we don't tell them to use the funds from those pensions, but we do identify the opportunities of having a pension that could produce some cash. And finally, I just thought it might be worth telling you a couple of things that have actually happened during my role as a debt advisor that have made a difference to people. So looking at the pensions and going through people's paperwork, quite often you will come across investment paperwork in there as well. And people are absolutely amazed when I say to them, oh, you've got a pension summary here, and you've got a pension fund. What's that for? And they say, oh, I don't know, I don't understand it. I really don't understand. I don't know what it actually is. So I said, do you know what? I said, it might be just worthwhile. I said, because with the advent of pension freedom at the age of 55, if they're over 55 or just coming up to it, might be well worth them having a look at it. So I've had a couple. So my lowest one has been 24,000 and my biggest one has been 50,000 that people didn't even know they had. Once again, we don't give them financial advice. We don't tell them what they should be doing with their pensions, but it is an option if they have debts, if you're looking at tax-free lump sums, etc., etc. And the one that's always stuck with me about making a difference happened early on when I first started out as a debt advisor. And at this interview, I met with a client who had been made redundant from a very, very well-paid job. He had a range of credit commitments that were affordable whilst they were working. No savings, and they didn't have any savings, and they were worried about the future. The interview ended, and as I were about to leave my office, they shook my hand and said, I would have thought that Citizens Advice was the last place I would visit for debt advice. I now realise that it should have been my first. So Citizens Advice, good debt advice from whichever organisation you actually seek it from, does make a real difference. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation, Amanda.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Linda. It's very informative, as was the previous presentation as well. So I hope you found that a really interesting time from both of our speakers. If you'd like to put any questions you have in the chat box now, we'll open the questions to the panel. So if you'd like to type something and we'll take it from there. And Linda, you can stop sharing your screen now. Thank you. Okay, any questions coming through for either Linda or John or Bal? Anything anybody would like to ask?
There you are. I'm back with you now. Stop sharing.
Brilliant, lovely, that's great, thank you. Yes, so would anybody like to ask any questions? In fact, we're not such a huge group that you could just raise your hand if you wanted to, but use the chat box if you would like to. I don't mind which. No? So from Steve, no questions, but thank you all. That's great. Anybody else? Anything anybody would like to know? Obviously, we will put this recording out onto our YouTube channel. That will take a couple of weeks, I think, to be loaded. So you will be able to look at things there if you want to. But any questions from anybody? What's the sort of feedback you get, John and Belle, when you work with organisations? What do you typically get in terms of feedback?
Everybody finds it useful. Got a couple of questions, but some people may need to think about it when they're ready to move forward.
Yeah. I should imagine people feel a lot less stressed afterwards. And certainly I know that that's the case with Citizens Advice. People normally leave there feeling relieved to some extent that they've at least taken that first step and had that first conversation. So a question here from Victoria: what have your clients said about the return on investment for companies offering the financial wellbeing services to employees?
I'll try and answer that if I may. I think it's really a first step is to offer something like webinars. And as Bal said, they can be done on a sort of periodic basis. And I think it's quite hard to quantify the return on investment, but we have been delivering these sort of events for since 1989. So what's that? 33 years. And we started with the councils in North Wales, the local authorities. There are 6 of them, and they've come back every year for 30 years and done them. So I think that the experience has been that when we engage with employers, and I think, you know, as I say, I haven't got a pounds and pence figure for return on investment, but the feedback that people go back to their HR managers and say, we found this extremely useful, and we do feedback for every event. And the fact that client organizations keep coming back to us sort of demonstrates the return on investment, I think. I hope that answers that to some extent.
Thank you. Okay, and do remember, wherever you are, audience members, there are lots of local Citizens Advice bureaus around the country and in Essex, so you can point your employees to any of those local offices and you will receive the same level of support. Sometimes if they're a much smaller office, they might not have quite the sophisticated debt team that Linda runs, but they will always, of course, refer you on to a larger bureau nearby. And it's certainly, when I was supporting CAB locally, I can completely agree with the data that all of our speakers mentioned around the number of people when they have debt problems who also are suffering from mental health. And it's a little bit chicken and egg. Sometimes, you know, they're feeling unwell, worried, anxious, depressed because they have debts, and sometimes that very anxiety and depression led to the debt. So it's, yeah, it can be quite a downward spiral. So anything we can do to support people would be great for them and make them more effective employees. Of course, if they're not worrying about their debts at work, then they'll be more effective and productive for us. But most of all, they'll feel much better about themselves.
Just to answer Victoria's question, she's saying, how can you measure it? The measurement is via the financial wellbeing survey. So if you send the survey around the beginning, the end, so if you send it out on day 1, 6 months or 12 months into the program, where you run maybe 4 or 5 financial wellbeing events, and you've done the portal, if that score keeps going up, I guess that's how you measure that your employees understand more about financial Just to give you an idea, Victoria, there's 19 questions to answer, and one of them is how prepared you are for any unexpected expenditure. And then you got a question of very much so, agree, neither, disagree, or strongly disagree. And based on the answers you give, will give you a score. So it gives you a score to the individual, but it's also gives you a score overall. So if you employ 200 people and 67 people completes it, you'll get an overall score, and the individual will get their score as well. Even if that score goes up, then I guess that's how you measure it, and it always will have to go up because people understand how to manage money, people understand how to set up a life insurance policy, people understand what the difference between a defined benefit and defined contribution pension scheme, and understanding how can you look at certain things like state pension forecasts. So I hope that's an answer to your question, really.
Yeah, it's a good point. Thank you, Belle. Any final questions from anybody? No? In that case, it just leaves me to say thank you very much to our speakers, Belle Darnoy, John Chadwick, Linda Redgrave. Thank you so much for your time. It was a really informative session. And as I say, I look forward to being able to send out the recording onto YouTube and letting all of our members know it's there within the next 1 or 2 weeks. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a very nice evening. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks very much, Amanda.
You're very welcome. Let me just stop the recording.